Hi, Lenore here. I'm going to explain this particular exercise, 3-4B. I've had quite a few questions about it. So I took the problem and I kind of broke it down, the pieces, into different sentences. The first part, Sloan Manufacturing, applies overhead based on 120% of direct labor cost. What does this mean exactly? Well, for example, this is hypothetical. If labor costs were $90,000, we could calculate an estimate or an applied manufacturing overhead by multiplying $90,000 by 120%. So in this hypothetical, labor cost is $90,000 and manufacturing overhead applied or estimated based on the actual labor cost would be $108,000. So how would that work in this problem? Well, in the second sentence, we're told that actual manufacturing overhead incurred, that suggests that it's actual, is $115,000. In addition, we're given information about work in process, finished goods, and cost of goods sold. These are the direct labor amounts, actual direct labor amounts. So if we look at them, we see that in this problem, direct labor costs are $300,000, but we need to convert this information into applied manufacturing overhead. So here's where we use our 120%. We would take, for work in process, $45,000, multiply it by 120%, and that would be $54,000. For manufacturing overhead finished goods, we would do the same. $30,000 multiplied by 120%. For the cost of goods sold, again, we would take $225, multiply that by 120%, and we would come up with these figures: $54,000, $36,000, and $270,000. This totals $360,000. So $360,000 is what Sloan Manufacturing has applied or guessed for this particular period in time. So let's put in our $360,000. So in this situation, we have more applied than we have actual. Remember, actual is the debit side, applied is the credit side. So in this situation, we are actually over-applied by $45,000. We guessed more than what the actuals were. So now what we're going to do is convert this $315,000, which was actual, into a percentage basis so that we could subtract actual costs from the applied costs. So in order to do that, we need to calculate what is the relationship between these direct labor costs to the total. So for example, $45,000 divided by the total $300,000 is 15%. We would do the same for our finished goods, 30,000 divided by 30,000, and 225,000 divided by 300,000. Excuse me, I misspoke. 30,000 divided by 300,000. So this is the relationship for work in process, finished goods, and cost of goods sold to the total. So we need to determine, just for work in process, what is the actual amount versus the applied amount. Remember, we calculated what the applied amount was right here. So let's take care of that. We're going to look at the total, $315,000, and multiply that by 15%. So I've put the formula here so that you could see it. Now I'm going to actually put the formula in the cell. 15 times 15%. That means our actual costs, I'll write that up here, actual manufacturing overhead determined by allocating this 315 is $47,250. Our applied manufacturing cost is the $54,000. Let me format these cells so it makes just a little more sense to you. So the difference between these two, here's our actual less our applied, is they give us this calculation, this formula that I've just used makes it come up to a negative, but the idea is that this is over applied. Please don't assume that negative equals over applied, because if you mix the columns up, it will come out the other way. But so there's a difference, let's use the word difference, of $6,750 between actual work in process manufacturing overhead and applied work in process manufacturing overhead. So it results in a difference of $6,750. Let's do it again for finished goods. I'll show you what that formula looks like. Again, we're going to use the incurred amount, multiply that by the 10%, put it here in the formula, or the cell actually. So actual finished goods, which is determined by using this allocation or proportion, compared to the applied finished goods manufacturing overhead, is $31,500 less $36,000. Again, this is over applied manufacturing overhead. Cost of goods sold would be the 315 multiplied by the 75%. Let's put that here in the cell. Actual cost of goods sold manufacturing overhead was $236,250, and the amount applied or estimated was the $270. Again, subtracting one from the other, we have the amount over applied. So for the second part of this problem, we need to redistribute this over applied amount into these different accounts: work in process, finished goods, and cost of goods sold. So to do that, we would need a debit in manufacturing overhead in the amount of $45,000. Then we would credit work in process for the amount of $6,750, credit finished goods in the amount of $4,500, and finally credit cost of goods sold in the amount of $33,750. These three numbers added up equal the $45,000. So that's how we calculate it, and that's how we prepare the journal entry. So with that said, thank you, Maria, for calling me and talking to me about this problem. And that's why I'm creating this podcast. With that said, Lenore out.